Einen wunderschönen guten Morgen aus Washington. Schönen Nachmittag nach Österreich. Mein Name ist Klaus Hofstadler, ich leite das Außenwirtschaftscenter in Washington und wir haben uns heute als Thema vorgenommen Defense, Aerospace und Security in den USA. Die nächste Slide bitte. Ich muss Ihnen kurz erzählen, wir hatten einen größeren technischen Ausfall hier. Wir sitzen jetzt daher alle rund um ein Ausfall-Notebook, daher kann es sein, dass die Slide-Übertragung, also das Weiterschalten, etwas länger dauert. Also ich entschuldige mich jetzt schon dafür. Es hat bei der Generalprobe perfekt funktioniert, heute nicht mehr, aber es sollte jetzt trotzdem alles klappen. Also ich werde kurz Sie einführen in das Thema, unseren Branchenfokus Sicherheit vorstellen und dann gibt es die Briefings von unseren zwei Stargästen hier, Colonel Scott Wallace von US Air Force und hier haben wir Wayne Fujito, einen hochkarätigen Berater im Bereich Public Procurement. Und im Anschluss haben wir Zeit für Q&As. Nächste, die Umfrage bitte starten. Die Frage ist, sind Sie bereits am US-Markt tätig? So, sehr gut, also doch der überwiegende Großteil ist bereits im US-Markt tätig. Wir konzentrieren uns aber nicht allgemein auf den US-Markt, sondern ganz spezifisch auf den Bereich Public Procurement, Defense, Security und Aerospace. Also wenn Sie hier in diesem globalen Vergleich sehen, die USA ist mit einem Verteidigungsbudget von 600 Milliarden im Jahr, gibt mehr als es die nächsten 20 Länder in Summe. Nächste Slide bitte. Damit ist die US-Regierung der größte Kunde weltweit im Bereich Defense and Security. Sie sehen hier die großen Ausgabenblöcke, besonders interessant für österreichische Unternehmen natürlich die Bereiche Procurement und Research, wenn man das zusammenzählt, also über 150 Milliarden US-Dollar im Jahr. Nächste Slide bitte. Die Auftragsentwicklung im Bereich Aerospace, sowohl zivil als auch militärisch, ist sehr vielversprechend über die letzten 5 Jahre. Sie sehen hier, sowohl Shipments als auch Orders sind stetig gestiegen. Ebenso der Backlog ist bei über 700 Milliarden. Das heißt, in diesem Bereich sieht man ganz deutlich, dass langfristig hier noch viele Möglichkeiten sind. Wir sehen auf der nächsten Slide, um sozusagen zu zeigen, wie wichtig auch die Importe sind in diesem Bereich. Im Jahr 2015 wurden knapp 60 Milliarden US-Dollar importiert, vor allem Flugzeugkomponenten wie Motoren, Composites etc. Im militärischen Bereich deutlich weniger. Das liegt an den strengeren Procurement-Vorschriften der Großteil der Unternehmen, die in größeren Volumen liefern an das US-Militär produzieren, hier zumindest anteilsmäßig in den USA. Jetzt nach diesem kurzen Einblick ist die zweite Frage, ob Sie bereits Geschäftserfahrung mit Projekten der US-Regierung haben. Darum geht es heute, um Technologie, um Leistungen, um Produkte für die US-Regierung im Bereich Aerospace, Security und Defense. Wir sehen hier, 62% haben gewählt. Also wir sehen hier, dass 13% bereits Erfahrungen haben, 88% noch nicht. Also ja, eigentlich müssten es 87% sein, noch nicht. Das heißt, es ist viele Neuankömmlinge, das freut uns, weil das ist auch die Idee dieses Seminars, dass wir Ihnen mit diesem ersten Briefing ein paar Ideen geben, wie das laufen könnte. Und ich werde Sie nicht mehr länger mit meinen Ausführungen aufhalten. Stelle jetzt kurz unsere beiden Sprecher vor. Wir haben einerseits unseren Vertreter vom US-Militär, Colonel Scott Wallace. Er leitet, also wir haben hier jetzt, ich sehe, wir haben hier vor den Herrn Wayne Fujito auf der Folie. Herr Wayne Fujito ist der Berater des Außenwirtschaftscenter Washington seit Oktober. Er ist ein hochdekorierter Vertreter, der 29 Jahre lang für das US-Militär gearbeitet hat in der US Army. Er kann Sie unterstützen mit Supply Chain, er kann Sie unterstützen bei Rechtsfragen. Bitte einfach an uns schreiben, washington.org, er ist für Sie da. Er hilft uns auch bei der Organisation eines Events von 4. bis 6. Oktober. Sie sehen hier auf dieser Slide einen Überblick zum Branchenfokus Sicherheit. Eben einerseits zurückgreifen auf Herrn Wayne Fujito, andererseits bitte überlegen Sie, ob Sie nicht im Oktober als nächsten Schritt nach Washington kommen zu einer dreitägigen Veranstaltung. Einerseits ein Austria Showcase, wo sie ihre Technologien präsentieren können. Andererseits der Besuch der größten Militärmesse, der AUSA in Washington. Und das bringt mich zur nächsten Frage. Haben Sie Interesse an dieser Veranstaltung teilzunehmen? Im Oktober. Sehr gut. Sie haben eventuell schon eine Einladung von uns erhalten, beziehungsweise werden diese noch erhalten in den nächsten Tagen. Also diese Veranstaltung findet im Anfang Oktober statt. Und jetzt stelle ich Ihnen unsere zwei Sprecher vor. Colonel US Air Force Scott Wallace ist der Direktor des Comparative Technology Office. Sozusagen ist er der Technologie-Scout für ausländische Technologien. Er leitet zwei Programme, wichtige Programme, das Foreign Comparative Testing Program und den Rapid Innovation Fund. 22 Jahre Active Duty bei der US Air Force. Er war unter anderem Chief der F-15 Foreign Military Sales Branch. Er war der Air Force Affairs Section Chief in Warschau in Polen. Und er hat auch schon eine neue Position. Ab Sommer in 3 Wochen wird er der Air Force Program Manager für das CV-22 Weapon System. Das ist diese Tilt-Rotor-Flugmaschine. Sein Nachfolger ist heute auch schon da. Lieutenant Colonel Sean Bradley wird ihn ersetzen, hört auch heute schon zu bei diesem Briefing und wird sie dann nach seiner Beförderung weiter unterstützen. Der andere Sprecher ist Colonel Wayne T. Fujito. Er ist ein Public Procurement Specialist, hat Führungsrollen in US-Industrieverbänden. Er ist der Chairman der International Division der National Defense Industrial Association. Er ist Honorary Chairman der NATO Industrial Advisory Group. 29 Jahre Active Duty bei der US Army, zuletzt als Chief of Staff für Strategic Defense Command. Wie gesagt, unser Berater hier für all diese Themenbereiche, nutzen Sie ihn. Eine Reihe österreichischer Unternehmen sind bereits mit ihm in engen Kontakt, um Gespräche in den USA vorzubereiten und neue Kontakte zu knüpfen. Und damit bin ich mit meiner Einführung am Ende und ich bitte Scott Wallace um seine Ausführungen.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning. Pleasure to be here with you. I'll try and speak slowly. Unfortunately, my German and Austrian is not up to the ability where I could give this presentation in Germany, although I have been to both Germany and Austria, and they're wonderful places. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today and to have this opportunity. So I understand the Department of Defense is not known for being easy to do business with, and so that's one of the reasons why we have the Foreign Comparative Testing Program. And you can see the mission here, really simple: find, assess, and field world-class technology. And from that point of view, it's very uncontroversial throughout our government that the U.S. Department of Defense is interested in finding the world's best technology. In some sense, we can't afford not to. And so we have a program dedicated to doing that, and that's what I'm here to talk about, talk with you today. When I speak to industry, so this program, in short, is designed, it's got its own dedicated funding, and it's designed to allow the various U.S. services, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the U.S. Marine Corps, to evaluate whether a foreign technology solution can be useful to them. When I speak to foreign industry, I always like to emphasize that this is not an investment program. So I can't, because we can't share in any profits or any risk, we're really just interested in your products, what you've developed. So in saying that, I like to point out that the most effective presentation from companies, the Department of Defense, is emphasizing why we should be interested in your technology. And there's 3 basic reasons. Either the technology should prevent significant cost savings, it should provide a significant performance enhancement, or it should represent an entirely new approach. And I really emphasize the last one. The first 2, especially the cost savings, are are difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to achieve because switching to a new technology comes with additional costs, right? So there's upfront costs that have to be spent in order to shift your baseline. But novel technologies are ones that we really can't afford not to be looking at, especially if they solve critical problems for the Department of Defense. So this program is designed to connect foreign technologies to the U.S. DoD development organizations as well as the acquisition programs. And we have a breakout of responsibilities. Although I'm wearing an Air Force uniform today, I am representing the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Acquisition Technology and Logistics. So that's an organization that supports the services, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the U.S. Marine Corps in equipping the force. So we support them. So we support them by providing funding, which also means we have the responsibility for selecting the projects every year. But the U.S. military services and the U.S. SOCOM actually do execute the testing. I should also mention that we do work with U.S. SOCOM because they have the authority to buy, and SOCOM is U.S. Special Operations Command, and they do have the authority to acquire items, just like the military services do. So I can answer more questions on that. Some people are familiar with that organization and others aren't. Next slide. So this is not a new program. We have been, the program's been in existence 36 years. Over that time, the U.S. The Office of Secretary of Defense has invested $1.3 billion, and it's led to procurements of 273 projects worth over $11 billion. It accelerates fielding, and this is critical in this day and age. If our allies or friendly partners have a technology, we really can't wait for a U.S. company to develop it. We need to be moving out on with that technology now because the rate of change of technology is only increasing, and we can't afford to wait. We also point out that this enhances the U.S. industrial base. That may seem counterintuitive, but there's two ways it does that. It provides, if we find a foreign technology that works with a U.S. system, it presents an opportunity for that foreign vendor to team with U.S. industry to provide this solution, or potentially license that technology. So the program, the FCT program, is exempt from any U.S. domestic preference legislation for testing and evaluation. So what that means is there's no requirements for the U.S. government to spend those dollars with a U.S. company. You know, if we go to procurement, that domestic legislation, preference legislation applies. So in many cases, and also for logistics reasons, foreign companies decide to work with U.S. industry to produce their products if they actually go to procurement. So the size of the program is important. Most projects are $600,000 to $800,000 a year, and they last for 2 years. And those funds cover the acquisition of the item as well as some of the costs for testing. And again, that's being supported by the services. So there's not one formula, but I like to point that out because it gives a scope to the size of the program. Although there's no formal limit to the size of our evaluations in terms of size, we generally don't look for complete end items. This would not, for example, if we were going to buy and evaluate an entire tank weapon system, that would be generally used as a, excuse us, that would generally be a different program. The way the program works, we review hundreds of technologies, and we really start about 10 to 12 new projects a year. You can tell from our budget, we have about $20 million a year, roughly, dedicated to the Foreign Comparative Testing Program. So if most projects are a little bit under $1 million, that gives us 12 new starts a year. and then say 10 to 12 new starts in 1 year, plus the bill for the previous year's projects. So hopefully that all makes sense, and again, I can take questions on any of this. Next slide. You may be asking which technologies in particular we're interested in. In 2016, we had 4 focus areas, specifically space capability resilience, autonomous systems, electromagnetic spectrum agility, asymmetric force application. These are very broad areas, but they do give you a sense of the kind of technologies that are of greatest interest to the Office of Secretary of Defense. I would say a bigger emphasis of late has been on autonomous systems, so systems that reduce the amount of workload on a single soldier, sailor, or airman, or systems that enable that single soldier to do more. An example would be an autonomous system that helps them process data. Electromagnetic spectrum agility, we know we need to operate in different areas of the electromagnetic spectrum than we are now. We're constrained into too small an area, so we'd like to be able to more easily move around the spectrum. Space capability resilience, we've become very reliant on our space capabilities, and the most obvious one that everybody knows about is GPS, and so we're looking for alternative ways to achieve those same effects that we achieve from space. Finally, asymmetric force application has to do with the ability to apply force in a significantly in a different way. Our directed energy programs go into that area, as well as radical cost changes. Our weapons are simply too expensive in many cases. So those are the focus areas, and I'm sure Cost can provide you with more information on that. We occasionally get questions on which technology readiness level. If you're familiar with the term technology readiness level, or TRL, it's a NASA-designed system to describe how mature the technology is. And really, we start at TRL 6. TRL 6 means there's a developmental prototype has been produced, and its prototype exists and has been shown to work in a relevant environment. So it may not be a technology that's already fielded, but that would be the earliest. Again, I mentioned that because if you have an idea that you need some money to develop, this isn't the right program to support a development of a new idea. Okay. However, we do look all the way through fielded items. There could be some technologies or even some, say, material processes that have been used for years in Austria, and say the process here, we can no longer use it because of environmental considerations, in which case it can be a very mature process or technology, and something that we need to replace the existing one in the U.S. We have lots of ways of learning about your technology. This is one, well, in this case, we're briefing the program to you, but we're happy to take information, say marketing materials. We have our own format, we call it a product template. Individual meetings with our office, meetings at trade shows. Make sure that computer's working. Meetings at trade shows, as Cost mentioned, this October. And we do occasionally travel internationally as well. So there's lots of ways to get more information. Working with your commercial representatives here in DC is an excellent method to find out more about the program. In my backup slides, I had example projects. I think those are sometimes useful to give you the kind of scope of technologies, but hopefully you'll be getting a copy of those.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So maybe one thing, so it's not all that abstract. So you're currently, we're not naming names here, but you're currently in discussion with an Austrian company about for your future interesting technologies, and apparently the talks are going well. So this is not something that we just brief for briefing's sake. So actually things are happening, and it's an interesting program. So wherever you feel that there's something that could be applied and is not yet out there in the US, please get in touch with me, and we'll forward it to the FCT guys to see if this makes sense to the US. So we'll try to get up our slides again. Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one more item on that. So our budget in the US is approved annually. So we generally have an annual cycle of selecting these projects. So it's not especially fast. So if we learn about your technology, generally we hear about it. If we hear about it, say this October, at the opportunity this October, that would be a candidate for funding beginning as early as the following October. So it takes a while to collect all the information, get it out to the services, have them consider it, really develop a plan of how they would evaluate it, and develop that into a project, and then down select it and get it ready for execution. And then the following October, once it's selected, then the process would start of how they're going to, say, generally speaking, contract with your company to acquire the articles.
Thank you. So, wir bräuchten wieder die Präsentation, wenn möglich, damit wir überleiten können zur nächsten Präsentation. Thank you very much, Scott. So, Wayne, yes. Please help us now to translate the possibilities of a US government program into the reality of an Austrian company or a foreign technology provider. What's the best way to do this?
Okay, let me begin by saying to my dear friends in Austria, I have seen the list of companies that are on the other end, and to all of you, I would say Guten Tag, because I think it's sometime after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It is a pleasure to participate in this webinar. I have an awesome task because Herr Hofstadler gave me, he said, keep your slides limited to 10 slides to cover the U.S. defense and security market and some of the strategies that may be helpful to Austrian companies. By quick review, it was my pleasure to participate in a seminar in March, both in Vienna, and also in Linz, where I met some of you that are listening today. I was heartened to see the results of the survey, that a number of companies already have business interests in the United States, and about half of you may be coming in October for the U.S.-Austria forum here that the embassy here is organizing with NDIA. Next chart, please. I will try to quickly cover a brief overview of the defense and security market participants. What I mean by participants is, just like in any business transaction, you have buyers and you have sellers. So I will be talking about the government buyers of either services or capabilities and the private sector or industry providers or sellers of that capability or service. We'll talk briefly about how to find business partners. And lastly, I will quickly touch upon some business development resources, because there is no way in this limited time to impart upon you any detailed analysis of business development procedures. Next chart. Okay, this first chart on market participants identifies who some of the major U.S. government buyers are. And I've divided them by the Department of Defense, which is huge, and you saw that from Herr Hofstadler's charts at the introduction of this webinar. Secondly, a little bit on the Department of Homeland Security, and then the Department of Energy. with regard to the Department of Defense, I would point out that when we had the forum or seminar in March, it was my objective to try to explain who some of these people are, organizations are, in the Department of Defense. What you see before you on this chart are the list of the military services or departments, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force. The Department of Defense agencies, and I should have put maybe a category above that, and that being the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And that's where Colonel Wallace and his Comparative Technology Office resides. The DoD agencies are DARPA. I think most of you know about the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Missile Defense Agency, the Defense Information Systems Agency, the Defense Logistics Agency, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and the National Security Agency. These are agencies which have substantial procurement budgets. And then there are DoD laboratories for each of the military services. The Army, Navy, and the Air Force have excellent laboratories and R&D centers, and they are constantly looking for advanced technologies and things that Colonel Wallace mentioned, especially in the international community. The Department of Defense also has a number of commands. We call them combatant commands, each of which, through the Department of Defense, have some impact on procurements. And then Colonel Wallace mentioned the Special Operations Command, some Special Forces Command. They have their own system and are quite, they're a very good customer for industry, provided that the industry can meet some of their requirements. Then I've listed just briefly the Department of Homeland Security and two current procurements that are ongoing that have a duration. For example, the 5-year innovation, the Department of Homeland Security has a 5-year program where they're seeking innovative technologies. And they use what's called OTA or other transaction solicitation or authority. And this closes in 2020. So this is something that is out there and is available for U.S. and international companies to try to compete for. They have a Homeland Security Advanced Research Project Agency, which is pretty much tailored after the Defense Department's DARPA, but they have a special interest in specific advanced technologies. And then there is a Homeland Security securing the Internet of Things, just to point out another active procurement that closes in December of this year. And then the Department of Energy, this is our administrative department which specializes in energy and the strategic weapons capability that the services have in the DoD. I'm talking about the national laboratories like Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos, and a number of these that you've heard about. The Department of Energy has an Advanced Research and Project Agency, -E, meaning energy, which is tailored again after the Department of Defense's DARPA, and they come out with a number of solicitations for future energy-related technologies. And among the various national laboratories of the Department of Energy, there is the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, which has, among other functions, the responsibility to do testing and evaluation of a number of innovative technologies that industry may offer. And I might point out that industry does not mean just U.S. industry. I was personally involved with one international capability that was of high interest to the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It was tested, it was evaluated, and then it was published in the Department of Energy resource available to all the national laboratories. Next chart. Now I'm going to talk about the private sector participants. These are people that I would call the sellers of services, and these are, for the most part, large or medium-sized or small companies, for example, primarily here in the United States, since that's where I am physically located. There is a tier rating that the Department of Defense uses in evaluating superior supplier performance through what they call the Superior Supplier Incentive Program. And I've listed the major Tier 1 original equipment manufacturers or systems integrators. A number of these companies you are already familiar with or have heard about. They're listed in alphabetical order. I did not want to get involved in any politics of one company over the other. These are very competitive companies. You could see them on the list. BAE, Bell Helicopter, Boeing, General Dynamics, Huntington Ingalls Shipbuilding, L3 Communications, Lockheed Martin, who recently acquired the Sikorsky company, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and United Technologies. And I put a note there that at the time that this Tier 1 rating was awarded, United Technologies at that time owned the Sikorsky company before it was acquired by Lockheed Martin. And it also owns the Pratt Whitney engine company. Next chart. Okay, here is a continuation of private sector participants, but what are categorized as major Tier 2 contractors according to the DoD. And you can see some of the companies here. You have the charts, so I won't go through these companies. Now, I should make a clarification here. A number of times when we talk in industry about Tier 1 or Tier 2 or Tier 3, we're talking about different levels of contractors. Usually the typical jargon for Tier 2 means a subcontractor who works for some prime contractor, the people on that first list. But on this list, where you've got major Tier 2 contractors, many of these are frequently also prime contractors. And then the third category is at the very bottom. There is a lower tier set of subcontractors and suppliers. And I refer later on in this short presentation to an industry resource that is available online for every company for all of you in Austria, for example, that want to know about a listing of U.S. companies, who they are, in what industries, in what categories. The National Defense Industrial Association, with which I am affiliated, as a matter of fact, chairing the international division, has been a challenge because we are probably the most active division within the National Defense Industrial Association of the 35 divisions that they have. And I'm proud of that, and I think this is also underscores the validity of working, for example, through this webinar with Austria. But there is going to be a reference in chart 7 of this presentation that talks specifically about the NDIA Mega Directory and how you can access it. Next chart. Okay, now the issue here is, how does the private sector engage the U.S. government? And so the purpose of this slide is try to put a 1-hour presentation on one chart that basically says that there are usually 2 phases or 2 periods whereby private companies, Tier 1, Tier 2, whatever tier, could try to engage the U.S. government. And that first phase is a pre-solicitation phase. This means that there is no solicitation request for proposal or any document out there yet. And so any company can request a meeting with the U.S. government to understand what their requirements are. Let me just give a a close example here. Let's say that there is an interest by a particular company in what the Comparative Technology Office is looking for in terms of future or advanced technology. And specifically, they want to know about the Foreign Comparative Technology Office. I would expect that if a company placed that request through proper channels to Colonel Wallace's office or his replacement's office, that you will be granted an opportunity to meet with them and gain an understanding of what kind of technologies the Foreign Comparative Testing Office might be interested in. That's just an example, but that works across the board with every one of the public sector buyers of services that I indicated on the very first chart, Market-1. Then you could submit an unsolicited proposal. This might be a paper that industry prepares on its own initiative, describing a capability, whatever it is, and maybe including in that some pictures, whatever, but it's just an unsolicited proposal suggesting to that government organization, hey, we've been following the great work that you're doing. We believe we have something that you might want to consider, and if you want to know more about this, we are available to come and meet you. And that works an awful lot. Many times, unsolicited proposals may end up in appearing in some future procurement request. White papers are another way. This is just a U.S. term for a piece of paper that describes whatever it is that you want that government organization to understand. Frequently, government organizations, the Army, Navy, Air Force, military departments, or the DoD agencies, or the Office of Secretary of Defense, will put out what's called an RFI, a request for information. And that request for information will specify those areas in which the government agency is interested in trying to understand what capability is out there in industry. Okay, RFIs. And there is a strategy that companies use to respond to RFIs. The very seasoned ones are pretty strategic in that they provide just enough information that the government agency will understand, but yet don't put down all their secrets, because the RFI responses sometimes become public documents. And so these companies are in competition with one another, and if any of the information from one company is sought by the 5 other companies, then that sort of, puts the first company at a handicap. And so there's quite a strategy involved in how you respond to RFIs. But the general idea here is this is an opportunity for industry, regardless of the size, to find out or to describe to the U.S. government what capabilities they have. Sometimes some of these RFIs are restricted only to small business companies or medium-sized companies. Another way is when you start to hear of some procurement opportunity coming out in the future, companies like to start working on teaming arrangements with other companies. And then, of course, there are industry briefings. And then the last part is the one that most people know about, and that's post-solicitation. Once the solicitation comes out, the RFP comes out, now you are restricted. You can't talk to the government, but you can talk to your industry partners. Next chart. I think there's 2 charts left here. Finding partners. Well, I say that you could go through defense industry associations, or you can attend industry expositions and exhibits. You might have referral by your industry partners, or you might have referrals by your company representatives in the United States, or if you have a U.S. or international consultant. Okay. The National Defense Industrial Association's mega directory that I pointed out here is that very first item there. If you go to that website, you will have readily an index of all of the U.S. companies among the 1,600 that belong to NDIA. The next chart, and this is my final chart, it has to do with business development. How do you find public procurement opportunities? And so I'm not going to go through this list, but this is available for you because there is the Fed Biz Ops, or Federal Business Opportunities, is one that industry uses, monitors regularly. And this is where new opportunities come out, whether an RFI or an RFP or what have you. The Defense Innovation Marketplace is a place that you need to check out to see if there's any truth in what I am saying, because it is through this one website that you will know all of the DoD business opportunities in the military services, the DoD agencies, and the major commands. And then the others are for the advanced research related to DOE, Department of Energy, or the Department of Homeland Security. In summary, which is my last, oh, wait a minute. There's a next chart. Okay, this is the one that shows the defense industry innovation marketplace. This is one that I really recommend every company that is in the room on the other side in Austria check out. Okay, and my last chart is just a quick summary.
Next chart.
The defense market is huge. It is complex, but there are potential opportunities for Austrian companies. The DoD, the Department of Defense writ large, is interested in international S&T and R&D capability. You heard that from Colonel Wallace. And I say a strong case could be made for Austria. I talked about the Defense Innovation Marketplace, and I would conclude by saying that working with Herr Hofstadler's office here, I am prepared to assist to the extent possible for Austrian companies to be competitive in the U.S. defense and security market.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Just a quick follow-up question on your last comments. So what can an Austrian company, like we have 18 participants right now listening, what can they expect from you, in particular with regards to our event in October? So we've heard that 50% of them are thinking of joining this event. So this will be beyond checking the website. What are you trying to provide to them and together with us?
Right. Well, two things. First of all, from the U.S. government point of view, we are coordinating with the Air Force Research Laboratory and the Naval Research Laboratory, among two of the service laboratories, to get their technical people to come to this forum, to be available to meet and talk with Austrian companies. But also I want them to give a good overview presentation of what they are looking for, what they are working on, and what they are looking for in the way of technologies. Secondly, in addition to government speakers, and there will be, by the way, there will be keynote speakers from the Austrian government. The National Armaments Director, for example, will be here from Austria. But in addition to the government speakers, we are working to arrange for specific companies, U.S. companies, who will be attending the AUSA, the Army of the Association of the U.S. Army Convention, during the earlier part of that week, 4 to 5 or 3 to 5, before the October 6th event, and get many of those companies that match up with the companies that are signing up for this event from Austria, so that there could be a discussion of potential partners.
Thank you. Perfect. So I'm trying to check now if we already have questions from our participants. So the floor is open for your questions. We're just trying to find the window where we can see it. I apologize again, this was planned slightly differently, but I'm sure we can find it somehow. So while we look for it, I will have one more question here, which is Scott. Austria is a small country and not a NATO member. So we are not a member of NATO, and we're probably not going to be in the near future. So in how far does this influence acquisitions decisions by the US government? Do you think that this is an issue, or can we still compete in a fair and square way?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm not sure if anyone, there we are. Okay. Now you can see me. So as far as the foreign comparative testing program goes, it is limited to our partner countries, and Austria fits that definition. So it's not a limitation for the foreign comparative testing program. Secondly, as I mentioned, we're looking for the world's best technology, and we simply can't afford to rule out new, exciting ideas that provide significant value or solve significant problems for the DoD. So an example of this, one of the most important acquisitions we had in recent history in the Department of Defense was the MRAP, the Mine-Resistant Ambush-Protected Vehicle. It saved thousands of lives of soldiers in the United States. The primary technology that made that vehicle work was the V-shaped hull of the vehicle. That came from South Africa as a part of this program. So also a small country, also not a NATO partner. So as far as foreign comparative testing goes, no. I would say NATO countries do have some opportunities to work closer together. That obviously then Austria couldn't be a part of that. But as far as foreign comparative testing goes, no, there are no limitations for Austrian companies.
Great.
Please. Let me just add, one of the experiences I've had the pleasure of in the past is chairing the NATO Industrial Advisory Group. NATO has 28 nations, but they have a number of Partnership for Peace countries, and Austria certainly is one of them. At the most recent meeting of the NATO Industrial Advisory Group, held at the Allied Command Transformation Headquarters in Norfolk, Colonel Schweiger, who is, I believe, one of the signatories of this webinar this morning, was the representative of Austria, because the representative from the World Trade, the WTO, Reinhard Merrick, was unable to come. So Colonel Schweiger was there, and I can tell you that not just because he is watching on this webinar, but I can tell you from my heart that Austria was well represented.
Okay. So one thing that is always a big question is the cost of market entry, right? How much does a company have to invest? As you know, the Austrian industry structure is usually small and medium companies. And the question is always, how long, or how is it possible to start approaching the US market, the public procurement market, the defense, aerospace, and security market, without having a subsidiary in the US, without having a local presence? Is it possible for many of our companies who are still not really represented in the US with their own company to target this market, or do they need a local presence right away?
May I answer that?
Yes, please.
Okay. I would use the October 6th event that is being hosted at the Austrian Embassy as an example of how a company that has no representative in the U.S. or does not have a subsidiary office in the U.S. can take advantage of a major industry conference and exhibition like AUSA 3, 4, and 5 October, and then come to a tailored event, which is the U.S.-Austria Defense and Security Technology Forum that will be held at your embassy here. Because our efforts are being designed to help those companies that sign up for that forum with trying to pair them up with 3 or 4 companies from the United States who might also be attending AUSA, and therefore this is a matchmaking challenge which I have accepted and pledged to Herr Hofstadler.
Great.
That would not cost much in the way of an initial investment. What happens from that, the business case will dictate.
So, Scott, I do have a question for you, which is, we hope that the FCT program and your successor, Sean, will be present at our event as we've done the 2 previous years. In addition to that, our companies are mainly niche players. So they produce high-performance materials like high-performance alloys, composites, high-performance engine components, So it's usually a small but crucial part that enhances a system. So we usually don't compete on the whole systems level, but rather on something that is small but powerful. So how can they get to you? What's the best way? How should we take it from here? I mean, they've seen you now. We'll try to show them your successor in a few moments as well, so they should also know his face. But what's the best way to approach this? Should we route this through our office and then send it to you, or what would be the preferred mode for you?
So the best opportunity, say in preparation for that October event, is to get us some early marketing materials, and we have a particular format which basically takes marketing material, puts it into a format that's easier for us to keep track of. Mm-hmm. And then we'll provide, prior to that event, the office will provide some feedback. We're interested in learning about more of these. And what that does is it prevents people from wasting time. Right? There's no, your time is very expensive and very valuable, and we recognize that. And we don't want to spend time, your time, if there isn't some promise for a good match. If that makes sense. So, starting with marketing materials, getting some exposure to the technology is a good way to get that initial look. If it's worth the investment of a conversation. I will say we do go through hundreds of technologies and hundreds of opportunities a year. We try and do that quickly as kind of a quick sort, and then focus our time on the technologies that offer promise or that are of interest to the DoD. You mentioned components. Most of our projects are components that improve our currently existing systems in some way. So most of our projects are that. That works well, especially if it's a system that the DoD is maintaining. So the component, let's say it's an entire aircraft, and the Department of Defense is contracting for that component, that spare part, or that particular panel that needs to be made with a particular alloy. If that component is completely integrated and owned by say a tier 1 supplier, then the Department of Defense wouldn't really have wouldn't make sense to have a direct relationship with that company. Mm-hmm. So it depends on where that how that component is being procured. You also mentioned processes. Processes are of great interest, and we get a lot of, say, material processes, because the Department of Defense does deal with, say, refurbishing and sustaining our equipment. So and many of these processes, either the material is no longer available. The way if we're doing the same, say, a steel refurbishment, we've been doing it some way for 30 years. Mm-hmm. It may need modernization, so we do look at those as well. I think I covered a wide variety there, but hopefully I answered your question.
So I would like to ask Sean Bradley just for a minute, so you can meet Colonel Scott Wallace's replacement, starting in, all right, please, if you could say a few words, it would be great.
Yes, good morning again. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Sean Bradley. I'll be coming from just right here in DC, and I'll be starting in July. Replacing Scott. I very much look forward to the opportunity to work with industry across the world, and certainly with Austria. And I do plan to be part of the 6 October event, and look forward to meeting those that attend then. Thank you.
Very good. So all of you who are coming in October and all of you who might not be able to join us, please, if you have technologies where you think these are cutting edge and these might enhance products, existing systems, please get in touch with our office, washington@wko.at. Let us know about it and we'll take a look at it and we'll share it with Scott and Sean, and hopefully something good can get out of this. And apart from this, please get in touch with us in any case, not necessarily only for the FCT program, because we have the man here. Wayne Fujito is really one of the most experienced industry public procurement figures in this city. He has long standing experience, and it's something that we would want you to use, because it's an investment that we have taken upfront for Austrian companies to have him on board with us. So please use this opportunity and join us in October. Use his advice and our advice beforehand, and please get in touch with us. So we're checking once again if we have any question from your end. Yes, I think that. Okay, so yeah, there's the question about the briefing. So we will distribute the slides after the presentation, so you will have the possibility to look into it later on. So if we don't have any additional questions, I would like to thank the speakers who are not here today. I apologize once again that we had a few technical glitches this morning, but this is apparently what I've learned from our friends in uniform here. This is something that even happens to the most powerful country in the world, so that makes us feel a little better. So thank you very much for joining us today, Wayne, Scott, Sean. It's a pleasure to work with you, and we hope to see a lot of the participants of this webinar in October at our event at the Austrian Embassy in Washington, D.C. And if there are no further questions, I would like to end this webinar at this point. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you can take something away from this, and please, let's keep in touch. Our email is washington@wko.at, and I'll be happy to answer future questions. We'll distribute it to our colleagues around the table. Thank you very much. Ich danke Ihnen vielmals. Einen schönen Nachmittag nach Österreich. Und ich hoffe, wir bleiben in Kontakt und Sie melden sich bald bei uns mit Follow-up-Fragen und möglichen Wegen, wie wir zusammenarbeiten können. Alles Gute, auf Wiedersehen.